My name is David Miller. I'm 65 years old, and I've spent my entire life working as a carpenter. These rough hands have built furniture for hundreds of families in Chicago. 18 years ago, after my wife Emily passed away, Michael, my only son, convinced me to sell my house and move in with him. "Dad, why do you want to live alone? Come with us. We'll fix up the back room for you, and you'll have more company," he told me with a smile that seemed real. I agreed. I sold the house where I had raised my son, where I kept all the memories of my life with Emily. The money from that sale, added to what I had saved over the years, formed my small treasure, $70,000. It represented decades of work, of getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning, of coming home with splinters in my fingers and an aching back. With this, I can help my son and secure my old age, I thought as I tucked the bank book into the back of my closet. Every month without fail, I gave Michael my entire pension check for expenses. "Dad, you don't worry about a thing," he would say as he took the cash. I never questioned it. Family is family. My routine was simple. I got up early and made breakfast for everyone, even for Linda, my daughter-in-law, who rarely gave me more than a quick, "thank you." Then I'd watch my grandson Ethan when he got home from school, help him with his homework, and tell him stories about how I built the most beautiful furniture in the neighborhood. That Tuesday morning seemed like any other day. Michael and Linda had left early, and Ethan was at school. I took the chance to make chicken soup, the kind my son loved so much when he was a kid. I was in the kitchen chopping vegetables when I heard the front door open. Michael's voice and another man's voice came into the house. I peeked out carefully. It was Robert, Linda's father, a big man with a thick mustache and a stern look. We never really connected, but I always tried to be polite. I was about to greet them when I heard something that made my knife stop in midair. "And how are you going to pay for all that, Michael? The truck and the renovation are almost $50,000, Robert asked in that tone he always used, like my son was just another one of his employees. "Don't worry. Just use my dad's card. He's loaded." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. The knife slipped from my hand and hit the cutting board with a thud, stopping the conversation in the living room. "Is someone there?" Robert asked. "It must be my dad," Michael answered. "Dad, are you in the kitchen?" I didn't answer. With my heart pounding in my throat, I moved silently down the hall to my room. I needed to think. I needed to understand what I had just heard. I closed the door to my room, that small space at the back of the house that had been my home for 18 years. I sat on the edge of the bed and looked at my trembling hands. "He's loaded." My son's words hammered in my head. Loaded? My whole life I've worked, given him my pension check month after month, living in a tiny room. And Michael thought I was loaded. I opened my closet and pulled out the wooden box where I kept my important documents. There it was, my debit card, the same one I barely used because I always gave Michael the cash. I held it, wondering if they had used it before without my knowledge. The sound of approaching footsteps alerted me. I quickly put the box away and sat back down. "Dad, are you okay?" Michael asked, poking his head in without even knocking. "Yeah, son. Just had a bit of a headache. Came to rest." "Oh, well, listen. My father-in-law is here. We're going to go look at some things for the house. Hey, would you mind lending me your card? I left mine at the office." I stared at him, looking for any trace of shame on his face. I found nothing. Just that casual smile, like he was asking for a glass of water. My card? What do you need it for, son? Nothing important, Dad. Just to pay for a few things. I'll give it back to you tonight. I hesitated. Part of me wanted to confront him, to ask him why he told his father-in-law I was loaded. But another part, maybe the father who always wants to believe the best of his son, made me hold back. I don't have it here, son. I left it at the bank. I had to get it renewed. Michael's expression changed slightly. A flash of frustration crossed his face. Really? That's weird. You always keep it here. Yeah, but this time I had to leave it. Why don't you just use cash? It's not that simple, Dad. These are big purchases. But fine, I'll figure something out. He left my room without another word. I heard him explain to Robert that they couldn't use my card. Their voices faded, and finally, I heard the front door close. I just sat there for several minutes, feeling something inside me slowly break. The man I had raised, the one I had given everything to, was ready to use my money without asking, presenting me to his father-in-law as some old man who was loaded. With my hands still shaking, I pulled out my phone and called the bank's number. An automated voice greeted me, and after several menus, I finally got a real person. "Good morning, Mr. Miller. How can I help you?" said a kind woman's voice. "I need to block my card. I think someone might be trying to use it without my permission." "Of course. Let's just verify your identity." After answering her security questions, the woman blocked my card. She also checked my recent activity. "Mr. Miller, I see there's a pending transaction for $15,000 at a car dealership. Do you recognize this charge?" I felt a bucket of ice water dumped on me. "No," I answered, my voice barely a whisper. "Don't worry. Since the card is now blocked, that transaction will be automatically declined. Would you like to file a report for attempted fraud?" I thought about my son, my family. "No, not right now. I just want to make sure no one can use my card." "I understand. Your card is blocked, and we'll send a new one to your branch. I would also recommend changing your online banking passwords." I followed all her instructions, and when I hung up, I felt physically exhausted, like I had just carried an entire wardrobe by myself. I decided to get out of the house. I needed air. I needed to think far away from those walls, which suddenly felt like a prison. I grabbed my hat, my wallet, and the house keys. As I walked, I stopped at the park where I used to take Michael when he was a boy. I sat on a bench and watched the children play. Time had passed so quickly. I remembered how I used to work double shifts just to buy him what he needed, how Emily and I skipped treats to make sure he got a good education. "David, what a surprise to see you here." I looked up and saw Teresa, a woman my age who had been friends with Emily. Her warm smile was different from the storm inside me. "Teresa, good to see you," I replied, trying to smile. "Is everything all right? You look worried." I don't know what it was, the familiarity of her face or the real concern in her voice, but I suddenly felt the need to talk. I told her what I had heard that morning, how my son was planning to use my money without asking, how I'd been giving him my pension for years while he saw me as someone who was loaded. Teresa listened without interrupting, and when I finished, she took my hand. David, what they are doing to you is not right. You've worked your entire life. That money is yours. It's your security for the years to come. I know, but he's my son. Maybe it was just a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding? You don't try to charge $15,000 to someone's card without their permission, Teresa replied firmly. You know, my daughter is renting out an apartment in her building. It's small but nice, and the price is reasonable. Maybe you should consider it. The idea of moving out, of having my own space after so much time, made my heart race. But guilt immediately washed over me. Leave my family? I don't know if I could, David. Sometimes the best way to love your family is to teach them to respect you. Think about it. I got back to the house with that idea spinning in my head. As I walked in, I heard raised voices coming from the living room. Michael and Linda were arguing. I told you it was a bad idea to use his card without telling him, Linda yelled. My dad would have never found out. We give him everything he needs. What more does he want? Well, now my father is furious. He looked like an idiot at the dealership when the card was declined in front of everyone. I froze in the hallway. So they had tried to use my card, and not just for anything, but for $15,000. I felt my blood boil. Can someone tell me what's going on here? I asked, walking into the living room. They both jumped. Michael's face showed badly hidden nervousness. Dad, we didn't hear you come in. It's nothing. Just a misunderstanding with the bank. A misunderstanding? Or did you try to use my card without my permission to buy something for $15,000? The silence that followed was all the confirmation I needed. How did you know? Michael finally asked, his shoulders slumping. This morning, I heard you talking to your father-in-law. Just use my dad's card. He's loaded. Those were your words. Michael turned pale. Linda was staring at the floor, avoiding my eyes. Dad, it's not what it looks like. We were going to ask to borrow the money anyway. We just fast-tracked it because what? Because you assumed I'd say yes. Because you think my money is your money. Come on, Dad. You've always given us everything. What's the difference? The difference, son, is that it's one thing for me to give and another thing entirely for you to take. That money represents my entire life of work. Linda, who had been quiet, spoke with a tone that chilled my blood. Mr. Miller, with all due respect, you've been living with us for 18 years. We pay for the house, the food, the utilities. You barely contribute with your pension, which doesn't even cover what you consume. I was speechless. Barely contribute? After giving you every single penny of my pension for years? What are you saying, Linda? I've given every cent I get to help this house. Yes, but it's not enough, she answered coldly. An old man like you creates a lot of expenses, the medicine, the doctor visits, the special food you need. That's enough, Linda, Michael interrupted, maybe noticing the pained look on my face. But the damage was done. My daughter-in-law's words had shown me how they really saw me, not as the father who had given everything for his son, not as the grandfather who lovingly cared for his grandson, but as a burden, an expensive old man, an inconvenience. I understand, I said finally, feeling a strange calm replace the pain. Now I understand perfectly. Without another word, I went to my room. I closed the door behind me and sat on the bed, looking around. This little room that had been my home for almost 2 decades suddenly felt like a cage, one I had been a prisoner in without even realizing it. I pulled out my phone and called Teresa. "Is that apartment you mentioned still available?" I asked without any introduction. "Yes, David. Do you want me to set up a viewing for tomorrow?" "Please." That night, as I listened to Michael and Linda talking in low voices in the living room, I made a decision that would change my life forever. At 65 years old, it was time to start over, to take back my dignity and my freedom. I didn't know exactly what was waiting for me, but for the first time in a long time, I felt a spark of hope. Maybe, after all, it wasn't too late to have a life of my own. The next day, I woke with a determination I hadn't felt in years. I put on my best shirt, the one Emily gave me for our last anniversary, and I left the house early without saying goodbye to anyone. Teresa was waiting for me on the corner. Her warm smile gave me the strength for what I was about to do. "Good morning, David. Ready to see your possible new home?" I nodded without a word. As we walked to the building, Teresa filled me in. "It's small but very well kept. Second floor. It has 1 bedroom, a full bath, a kitchen dining area, and a small living room. The last owner was a retired professor who went to live with his daughter in Denver. He's selling it for $30,000 firm. $30,000. Less than half of my savings." The idea of having my own place after so many years living in a back room brought a lump to my throat. The building was modest but clean, with flower pots by the entrance. We walked up the stairs slowly, my knees aren't what they used to be, and Teresa opened the door to apartment 205. The first thing that hit me was the light. A large window in the living room let in the morning sun, lighting up the small but cozy space. I walked through every corner, feeling my heart race at the possibility of starting over. "What do you think, David?" Teresa asked after a while. "I like it," I replied simply. "Do you think someone could move in soon?" "The owner is eager to sell. If you decide to buy it and pay in cash, you could move in within a few days." The decision had pretty much been made the moment I heard my son offer my card to his father-in-law. Still, I wanted to be careful. "Can I think about it until tomorrow?" "Of course. I'll tell the owner you're interested." When I got back to the house, I found Michael waiting for me in the living room. His expression was a mix of regret and worry. "Dad, where were you? I got worried when I didn't see you in your room." "I went for a walk," I replied, avoiding specifics. "I needed to think about yesterday. I want to apologize. I shouldn't have tried to use your card without permission. It was a mistake." I looked at him. His apology sounded rehearsed, like he was more worried about the results of his actions than about having hurt me. "A mistake, son? Or was it a plan? How long have you been planning to use my money?" Michael shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "It's not like that, Dad. It was just a moment of weakness. My father-in-law was pressuring me to buy a new truck and do a remodel. He said it was the least I could do for my family. And my money is the solution. The money I've saved my entire life. I was planning to pay you back little by little," he said, though his eyes avoided mine. "Besides, you always say that everything you have is for us. It's one thing if I decide to give, son. It's another thing entirely for you to take without asking." The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Ethan, my grandson, returning from school. When he saw me, he ran to hug me like he always did. "Grandpa, look what I made at school." He showed me a drawing of him and me in what looked like a park. My heart ached, thinking about how my decision would affect this little boy I loved so much. "It's beautiful, kiddo. You're quite an artist." Michael used his son's presence to change the subject, but the tension remained, floating between us. That night, while everyone slept, I checked my bank book by the dim light of my lamp. The $70,000 I had saved, it was my security, my dignity, my future. To think my own son saw it as extra money he could spend hurt deeply. I remembered when Michael was little and I worked late at the carpentry shop to pay for a better school, how Emily and I skipped meals so he could have new shoes or a book he needed. All that effort, all those sacrifices, for what? To become an old man who is loaded. The next morning, I called Teresa early. "I want to buy the apartment," I told her bluntly. "I'm going to the bank today to get the money." "Are you sure, David?" I've never been more sure of anything in my life. The bank was more complicated than I expected. The teller looked at me suspiciously when I asked to withdraw $30,000 in cash. "Mr. Miller, can I ask what you need this much cash for?" "I'm buying an apartment," I answered firmly. "Wouldn't a direct transfer be better? Carrying that much cash is dangerous." "I prefer to do it my way, miss." After several forms and a verification call, they finally gave me the money in a discreet envelope. I was nervous walking out of the bank, but Teresa was waiting outside to go with me straight to the notary. The closing was fast. I signed the papers, handed over the money, and received the keys to my new home. My home. After 18 years living under my son's roof, I finally had my own space. "Congratulations, Mr. Miller," the notary said, shaking my hand. "The apartment is officially yours." When I returned to Michael's house, I was surprised to find Robert sitting in the living room with my son and Linda. The three of them fell silent when I walked in. "Dad, where have you been all day?" Michael asked, his tone trying to be casual but showing his nervousness. "I had things to do," I said vaguely. "Good afternoon, Robert." The man barely nodded in response. His expression was serious, almost hostile. "Mr. Miller," he began with that deep voice he always used to scare people. "Your son told me about a misunderstanding with your card yesterday." "There was no misunderstanding, Robert. My son tried to use my card without my permission to buy something expensive. I blocked it." "It was a communication error," Linda said quickly. "Michael thought you'd be okay with it. After all, you've always told us we could count on your help. Helping is one thing. Taking my money without asking is another." Robert leaned forward, staring at me. "Mr. Miller, we're all family here. And in a family, you support your own. My daughter and your son are trying to improve their situation to give Ethan a better life. And that makes it okay to take my money?" "Nobody took anything," he replied in a tone suggesting I was overreacting. "It was just an attempt to speed things up. Michael assured me you'd be on board." I stayed quiet, looking at the three of them. I understood then I was facing a united front. They had already decided that my money was theirs by right, that my decades of work were at their disposal. "I appreciate your concern for Ethan," I said finally. "But my money is mine, and I decide how and when to spend it." Robert snorted with obvious disgust. "I see selfishness comes with age. You live here practically for free, and now you refuse to help your own family. Dad, Linda cut in, though her tone suggested more embarrassment at her father's bluntness than disagreement. No, Linda, let's be honest, Robert continued. Your father-in-law has been living off your generosity for years. The least he could do is chip in when you need him. My blood boiled, but I stayed calm. Living off your generosity? I've given you my entire pension check every month for 18 years. I've watched my grandson while you work. I've cooked, cleaned, fixed things in this house. Is that living off your generosity? Your pension doesn't even cover what you consume, Robert said with contempt. An old man like you has a lot of expenses. That's enough, Robert, Michael finally said, maybe noticing how pale I'd become. My dad has always been generous with us. This is just a misunderstanding. But the damage was done. Robert's words only confirmed what I already suspected. To them, I was a burden, an expensive old man, an inconvenience. I understand, I said, standing up slowly. Now I understand perfectly. Without another word, I went to my room. I closed the door and sat on the bed, feeling a strange mix of pain and freedom. The decision I made this morning was the right one. It was time to leave. I started pulling my clothes from the closet, packing them carefully into the old suitcase I'd last used on my final trip with Emily over 20 years ago. As I did, I heard them arguing in the living room. You ruined it, Linda hissed at her father. Now he'll never help us with the money. It's just a matter of applying more pressure, Robert replied calmly. These old guys always fold when they feel guilty. He's my father, not an ATM, Michael protested weakly, though his tone suggested more concern about losing access to my money than about my feelings. I paused, leaning against the closet. I had lived 65 years. I had worked since I was 14. I had built a family. I had survived the loss of my wife. And now, in the supposed safety of my son's home, I was being treated like an object to be squeezed for value. An old man who was loaded. I continued packing with renewed determination. I packed my important documents, a few pictures of Emily, the few keepsakes I had. Everything else could stay. When I finished, I lay down on the bed, fully clothed. Tomorrow, while they were all out, I would go to my new home. No drama, no more fighting. I would just leave. I barely slept that night. My mind replayed the last few days over and over, trying to find the exact moment I became a stranger to my own son, an old man with extra money. The next morning, I waited patiently for everyone to leave. Michael left early for work without stopping by my room as he used to. Linda took Ethan to school, not without giving me a cold look when she saw me in the kitchen. As soon as I was alone, I called Teresa. All set? She asked when she answered. Yes. Can you help me with the bags? Half an hour later, Teresa arrived with her oldest son, a strong young man who carried my few belongings to the taxi waiting outside. Before leaving, I looked one last time at the small room that had been my home for 18 years. So many lonely nights, so many routine mornings, so much time wasted believing I was where I was supposed to be. I left a letter on my bed, a letter for Michael explaining my decision, a letter for Ethan promising him I would always be his grandfather no matter where I lived. I didn't mention the betrayal, the attempted theft, the hurtful words. What was the point? Some wounds are too deep to put into words. My new apartment welcomed me with that warm light I had loved from the start. Teresa helped me unpack, putting my few things in the empty spaces. "You'll need furniture, David. You can't live like this. Tomorrow I'll go buy the basics. For now, the bed the last owner left is enough." When Teresa left, I was alone in the middle of my new home. The silence was different here. It wasn't the heavy silence of my back room at Michael's, but a silence full of possibility. I walked to the window and looked out at the street. People passed by, busy with their own lives. The phone started ringing in my pocket. It was Michael. I let it ring until it stopped. A minute later, a text came in. "Dad, where are you? Linda said your things are gone." I didn't answer. I needed this moment for myself, this first day of my new life. The calls continued all afternoon: Michael, Linda. I even got a call from an unknown number that I suspect was Robert. All the messages had the same urgent, disbelieving tone, as if my decision to leave was impossible to understand, as if I had no right to seek my own happiness. That night, someone knocked on my door. I peeked out the window and saw Michael standing outside the building. He looked worried, staring up at the windows. Teresa must have told him where I was. I didn't open the door. I wasn't ready for that conversation, for the excuses, for the attempts at manipulation. I needed time to strengthen my decision, to get used to this new feeling of freedom. Michael left after half an hour of calling. His last words before he left echoed in the empty hallway. "This is abandonment, Dad. You can't just disappear like this." Abandonment? Me? After 18 years of giving every penny, every minute of my time, I was abandoning them. I sat down on the edge of the bed, the only piece of furniture in my new home. And for the first time in a long time, I let the tears flow. They weren't tears of sadness but of release, of recognizing the truth I had denied for so long. At 65 years old, I was starting over, alone but free, with less money but with my dignity intact. That night, I slept deeply for the first time in years, without the noise of Michael's TV, without the low-voiced arguments between him and Linda, without the constant reminder that I was living on borrowed time in a house that would never be mine. When I woke up, I looked out the window and saw the sun lighting up the street. A new day, a new beginning. At 65 years old, life was giving me a second chance, and I wasn't going to waste it. The following days were a whirlwind of activity and emotion. I bought some basic furniture, a table with 2 chairs, a simple sofa, a small television. Nothing fancy, but all of it was mine. Teresa visited me almost every day, bringing homemade food and helping me organize my new home. Her company made the change less lonely. "David, your apartment is really coming together," she commented one afternoon as we put away some plates she had gifted me. "How do you feel?" "Like I've woken up from a long dream," I answered honestly. "Sometimes I wonder why I didn't do this sooner." My phone, which I'd kept on silent most of the time, started to vibrate on the table. It was Michael again. He had been calling non-stop for a week, switching between messages of concern and messages of blame. "Aren't you going to answer?" Teresa asked. I sighed deeply. "I'm not ready yet." "You'll have to talk to him eventually, David. He's your son, after all." I knew Teresa was right. But every time I thought about facing Michael, I remembered his words, "Just use my dad's card. He's loaded, and the pain returned just as sharp as the first day. One morning, almost 10 days after I moved, someone knocked on my door. When I opened it, I was surprised to see Ethan with Michael. The boy ran to hug me while his father stood in the doorway, looking awkward. "Grandpa, I missed you so much," Ethan cried, holding onto my waist. "I missed you too, kiddo," I replied, feeling a lump in my throat. I hadn't realized how much I missed my grandson until that moment. I looked up at Michael, who still hadn't moved. "Do you want to come in?" They came into my small apartment. Ethan explored the space with childlike curiosity while Michael looked around with a critical expression. "It's cozy," he finally said, as if he couldn't find anything else to say. "Are you comfortable here, Dad?" "Very comfortable. Thank you." The awkward silence was broken by Ethan, who was bouncing excitedly. "Grandpa, can I come for a sleepover? We can watch movies and tell stories like before." "Of course, kiddo. Anytime." Michael cleared his throat. "Ethan, why don't you go see if Grandpa has any snacks in the kitchen while we talk?" Once the boy was gone, Michael sat across from me at the small table. His expression was a mix of regret and wounded pride. "Dad, why did you leave like that? You worried all of us." I left a letter explaining my reasons. A cold letter that explains nothing. 18 years, and you just leave without a word. I felt my anger rise. "And what did you want me to say, son? That I realize my own son sees my money as extra? That I found out I was being treated like an expensive burden?" Michael had the decency to look ashamed. "It was a mistake in judgment, Dad. I never meant to hurt you. The card thing was a stupid impulse. I was pressured by my father-in-law. And the expenses I create." "Was that your father-in-law talking too?" Linda was upset. "She didn't mean what she said. We never saw you as a burden, Dad." I wanted to believe him. I really did. I wanted to believe it was all a misunderstanding. But something in his eyes, the way they darted to the window, told me he wasn't being completely honest. "You should come home, Dad," he continued. "Your room is still there, waiting. Ethan misses you terribly. This is my home now, son. I bought it with my money. The money you said I had so much of." Michael tensed up. "You bought this place. How much did it cost?" $30,000, I replied calmly. I saw him doing the math in his head. He knew exactly how much I had, which only confirmed my suspicions. "Dad, you didn't need to spend that much. At home you didn't pay rent or utilities, or, I paid with my entire pension every month," I cut him off. "And with my work, taking care of Ethan, cooking, fixing things around the house. But that's not enough, is?" He stopped suddenly, realizing he was repeating the same hurtful words. "Too late." "Not enough," I repeated slowly. "There's the truth, son. It will never be enough for you. That's why I'd rather live with less but with dignity." Michael changed tactics. "Think about Ethan, Dad. He doesn't understand why his grandpa doesn't live with us. He thinks he's being punished. Using my grandson to manipulate me, that was a low blow, even for Michael." Before I could answer, Ethan returned. "Grandpa, I didn't find snacks, but I saw your tools. Are you going to build furniture here?" I smiled at the boy. "I am, kiddo. I was thinking of making a small bookshelf. I can help you. Dad never has time to teach me stuff like that. Michael shifted uncomfortably at his son's innocent comment. Our conversation was over, but the unspoken words hung between us like a storm cloud. They stayed for a couple of hours. I played with Ethan and showed him how to sand a piece of wood. For a moment, it was like old times. But Michael's tense presence was a constant reminder that nothing would ever be the same. When they left, Michael made one last attempt. Dad, at least tell me when you'll visit. Linda wants to talk to you too, to clear the air. I need time, son. You can bring Ethan whenever you want, but for now, I'm keeping my distance. Michael's face hardened. You know this is affecting the whole family, right? My father-in-law is furious. He says your attitude is irresponsible. Irresponsible for protecting what's mine. For dividing the family. He says at your age, you should be thinking more about us and less about yourself. Your father-in-law has no right to an opinion about my life or my money. Michael sighed, frustrated. Just think about it, okay? Everyone makes mistakes. It's not worth destroying a family over a misunderstanding. After they left, I sat by the window, watching the street. Was I being too hard? Should I forgive and forget? The thought of going back to that house, of feeling watched and used, made me feel like I was suffocating. No, I had made the right decision. At 65, I deserved to live with dignity, not as a walking ATM. The next few days were relatively calm. I started new routines, breakfast by the window, walks in the nearby park, visiting the market, working on small carpentry projects. The freedom to decide my own schedule was wonderful. One afternoon, coming back from the market, I noticed a familiar car parked near my building, Robert's black Mercedes. My heart sped up. What was he doing here? I entered the building cautiously, walking slowly up the stairs. When I got to my floor, I saw Robert talking to one of my neighbors. When he saw me, he smiled, that calculating smile I knew so well. Mr. Miller, what a coincidence. Robert, what are you doing here? Visiting a friend who lives nearby. I saw you walk in and thought I'd say hello. It was an obvious lie. He had come looking for me. If you'll excuse me, I'm in a hurry. Of course, but I was wondering if we could talk, you know, man to man, without the kids around. Something in his tone put me on high alert, but I decided it was better to face him head on. Come in, I said, opening my door. But I don't have much time. Robert entered, his eyes scanning every detail. He looked at the simple furniture, the fresh paint, the few decorations. An interesting place, he finally said, though it must be a big change after living in a large house with your son. A change for the better. Robert sat down uninvited. Mr. Miller, let's get to the point. Your attitude is causing problems in my family. My attitude? What are you talking about? This elderly tantrum, abandoning your family over a small misunderstanding with a card. I took a deep breath, controlling my anger. It wasn't a tantrum. My son tried to use my money, and I found out I'm seen as a burden. Families argue, Mr. Miller. Things are said in the heat of the moment, but you don't abandon your family over it. I haven't abandoned anyone. I simply decided to live on my own with my own money. Robert changed tactics, his voice suddenly friendly. Listen, I understand you're hurt, but think about Michael, Linda, little Ethan. They need you. Do they need me or my money? His expression hardened for a second before he forced another smile. Come on, David. We're men of the world. You worked your whole life for your family, right? What good is that money sitting in the bank when it could be helping your son, your grandson? My money is to secure my future, Robert, for my medicine, for my needs. And later, when you're gone, wouldn't it be better to see it well invested now, in Ethan's education, in improving the house where your family lives? When I'm gone, my money will go to whomever I choose. In the meantime, it's mine. Robert dropped all pretense of kindness. His face twisted in disgust. You are a selfish old man, David. After everything your son has done for you, keeping you for years, I paid my way, I interrupted, my patience gone, with my entire pension every month. And I watched my grandson and helped in the house. I was not a free guest. Your miserable pension didn't even cover your meds. Do you have any idea how much Michael and Linda spent on you? Were they spending, or were they investing, hoping to get it all back with interest when I died? Robert stood up, his face red with anger. You have one last chance, David. Go back home with your family, share that money you're hoarding, and we'll forget this whole incident. Or what, Robert? What happens if I decide to stay here and protect what's mine? He stepped closer until I could smell his expensive cologne and cigar breath. There are ways, David. Ways to declare an old man incompetent, legal ways to protect him from his own bad decisions. A chill ran down my spine. This wasn't an empty threat. I'd heard stories. You need proof, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Proof can be made up, David. An old man who suddenly abandons his home, spends large sums of money impulsively, shows strange behavior. Any doctor friend could diagnose the beginning of dementia. He walked to the door, letting his words sink in like knives. Think about it. A family should always stick together, don't you think? When the door closed, I collapsed onto the sofa, my legs shaking. It wasn't just the fear, it was the brutal truth. This was never about family or unity or love. It was about money. My money. I remembered Emily's words years ago when Michael first started dating Linda. Be careful with that family, David. Her father has the eyes of someone who values money more than people. As always, Emily had seen the truth long before I did. Robert's threats weren't just talk. I knew his reputation. He was a harsh man. If he decided to have me declared incompetent, my freedom, my dignity, and my money would be in serious danger. I barely slept that night. Every noise made me jump. At dawn, I made a decision. I called Teresa. I need the number of a good lawyer, I said without introduction. One who understands elder rights. What happened, David? You sound upset. I told her about Robert's visit, his threats, and my fear. Teresa listened and then said firmly, I know the perfect person. My nephew Daniel is a lawyer. He specializes in family law and has handled several elder abuse cases. He'll help you. That same afternoon, Daniel came to my apartment. He was a young man, maybe 35, with intelligent eyes and a calm way of speaking that made me feel confident. Mr. Miller, my aunt told me about your situation. First, I want you to know, what your son's father-in-law is describing is a form of elder abuse. Threatening to declare someone incompetent to control their assets is a crime. His words gave me some relief, but I was still worried. Can they do it? It's extremely difficult without solid proof. You are clearly competent. You live alone, you manage your money, you make rational decisions. No serious court would accept such a request. As Daniel was explaining my rights, we heard a commotion in the hallway. Michael's voice yelling for me. "Dad, open the door. I know you're in there." Daniel looked at me. "Do you want me to stay for this conversation?" I nodded, grateful. When I opened the door, Michael burst in but stopped short when he saw Daniel. "Who is this man? What is he doing here?" "This is Daniel, my lawyer," I replied as calmly as I could. "Your lawyer? What do you need a lawyer for, Dad?" "To protect my rights after the threats from your father-in-law." Michael went pale. "What are you talking about?" "My father-in-law just came to talk to you, to try to fix things." "To fix things?" "He threatened to have me declared incompetent so you could take my money." "That's ridiculous, Dad. You're exaggerating. You misunderstood." Daniel stepped in, his voice professional. "Mr. Ramirez, I assure you, your father is not exaggerating. Threats of this nature are elder abuse, and they are taken very seriously by the authorities." "Abuse? What are you talking about?" "We took care of my father for years. We gave him a roof, food, while trying to access his money without his consent," Daniel added. "That could also be a crime." Michael looked at me, his expression a mix of disbelief and betrayal. "So now you're going to sue your own family, Dad? Your son, your daughter-in-law, your grandson's grandfather?" "I don't want to sue anyone, son. I just want to be left alone. I want you to respect my decisions and my money." "Your damn money," Michael spat bitterly. "It was always more important to you than we were, wasn't it?" "No, son. What's important is respect, honesty, trust, values we seem to have lost." Michael looked at Daniel, then at me, and shook his head in disgust. "You've changed, Dad. The money has made you paranoid. I don't even recognize the man who raised me." "The man who raised you is still here, son. He just finally sees things he didn't want to see before." Michael went to the door but turned back one last time. "My father-in-law was right. Maybe you do need professional help, Dad. This isn't normal." When the door closed, I felt a huge weight on my shoulders. The lawyer put his hand on my arm. "Mr. Miller, what you just saw is a common tactic. They try to make you doubt your own sanity, your own decisions. Don't let them." "He's my son," I whispered, my voice breaking. "My only son." "I know, and that's why it hurts the most. But you must stand firm. Your decision to become independent was correct and legitimate. There is nothing abnormal about protecting what's yours." That night, after Daniel left, I sat by the window looking at the city lights. 65 years of life, of hard work, and now I was in a battle for my dignity, my money, my freedom. How did we get here? When did my son start to see me not as a father but as an obstacle? Robert's words echoed in my mind. There are ways to declare an old man incompetent. And Michael's, maybe you do need professional help. The threat was clear. They were willing to question my sanity just to get my money. As the city lights twinkled, I made a decision. I would not give in to fear. I would not be scared. At 65 years old, I was fighting the most important battle of my life, the battle for my dignity. 6 months have passed since that difficult time. My life has found a new rhythm. My small apartment is now fully furnished, mostly with pieces I built myself. My workshop is my sanctuary. Ethan visits me twice a week. His father drops him off on time. Our meetings are brief and formal. The relationship with Michael is still tense, but at least it exists. I barely exchange words with Linda, and I haven't seen Robert again. Teresa remains my faithful friend, my support. Sometimes she jokes that we should get married just to give the neighbors something to talk about. We laugh, and for now, that's enough. The money they wanted so badly is still mine, managed by me. A portion of it is in an educational trust fund for Ethan, where his parents can't touch it. The rest I use to live comfortably. When I look out my window each morning, coffee in hand, I think about the strange turn my life took. At 66 years old, I fought a battle for my dignity, and I won. It wasn't easy, and the emotional cost was high. But as I watch the sun light up the city and feel the freedom to decide my own day, I know it was worth it. Like I tell Ethan when he asks if I'm happy living alone, I'm not alone, kiddo. I'm in the company of the man who knows and respects me the most, myself. Yesterday, as Ethan and I were building a small wooden boat, he asked me a question. "Grandpa, will you ever forgive my dad?" I put down my tools and looked him in the eye. "I already have, Ethan. Forgiving is necessary so you don't carry that anger. But forgiving doesn't mean forgetting, and it doesn't mean putting yourself in a position to be hurt again. Does that mean you'll never live with us again? It means everyone has their own place in the world, kiddo. Mine is this apartment where I can be myself. And that doesn't stop me from loving you with all my heart." He seemed satisfied with that and went back to the boat. In the end, what my son, my daughter-in-law, and Robert never understood is that my money was never extra. Every dollar represented sacrifice, hard work, and plans for the future. But more importantly, it represented my right to choose, my independence, my dignity. At 66, with less money but with my freedom intact, I've learned that sometimes the greatest act of self-love is to say, enough, and start over. If my story moved you or made you think about the value of dignity at any age, please leave a comment. It's never too late to say, enough, and start over, just like I did at 65.